Hello. Hello, good evening. Good evening and welcome to our time we're going to be sharing together and talking about our coffee shop initiative. Welcome to St Martin's, those who are here with us, those who are watching us online. And we have a team here to lead our thinking. We've got, if we go to a wide shot, we can see hopefully all of us here. There's Abby and Andrew, who's our lay reader, and Abby, who's our curate, and I think hopefully we can see Dan too, who unfortunately can't be with us right now. There he is. There he is. It says Matt Taylor next to him, but unfortunately, he doesn't know why, and neither do I. So anyway, come back to me on that, Sarge. Thanks. Okay, so we've got a team here. We're going to just talk through the background really before we really launch into the detail. And we just wanted to give space for you and for the community to talk to us and ask us questions. Online people can leave comments and we can pick those comments up and hopefully answer as many as we possibly can do of that. But we wanted to start just by thinking about where all this has come from. It began for us on a day when, as a leadership team, this church kind of went away and thought about what we are, who we are. If we can have the one with the picture on, that would be great. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay. So we went away and we thought about what we were about, our mission, our values, how we wanted to work within this community. And we spent some time reflecting on some of the comments that were actually collected in a week of prayer, kind of about this time, 2018. And we created this booklet with it. And this booklet was something we thought about on that day. Two key phrases really came to mind when we were thinking about this, and that we wanted to be a place where all groups are working in unison to benefit the whole of the community. That was one of the things we came up with, and we were thinking through, accompanying that, a real sense of deep welcome to those in our community. But also we wanted to be, and this was another phrase that came up too, a shining beacon in the community, being attractive to people who are looking for help, support, healing, and understanding. Well, none of us at that time knew we were going to have a pandemic. None of us knew that actually our lives would be completely different. In fact, our everyday life in some way is under threat. During 2019, ideas of this coffee shop, of this, what we can do for the community, began to grow and to rise up. And we have this space, we have this building, we have the field. How can we use it to serve our community in a real and lasting way? And so we began to think about it, and we got a group together, and we're going to think, and you're going to give you some of the information that we've been thinking about in terms of that, and thought about what that might mean. And during that same season, we decided we also wanted to put a message on our walls for all those who come to this community centre, part of this community, to remind them a little bit about, the reasons why we do what we do. Unfortunately, there's a picture of me with my legs out, and I apologise for my knees. My wife says they're my finest features, my legs. But anyway, that's she's laughing too loudly then. So let's put that to one side. But actually, it was during this season what we actually thought about this incredible verse, and it was chosen by the community here, by the church, not by me. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace. And then lockdown happened. And those pictures you see of me doing that was actually the first spurt of lockdown, when Sandra and I could actually get into the building to put it on the very wall that we were planning to put it on. And I think this verse comes from a deep-rooted desire to bless other people because we believe God's blessed us. It's as simple as that, really. And hope has been in short supply. And as you know, what came from that as well was our Hope sign outside, which has actually been a centre. If you've ever been around for any length of time, you will see people taking selfies by it. It's become a bit of a destination point for that. But actually, people have commented about that sign and seeing it. So that's been really important to us. So we decided right at the beginning of the pandemic as a church, what we wanted to do is we didn't want to do our own thing. And that's fine, some churches did that, did their own packs and everything, and food parcels. And there were people who did that. But we decided to join the Safe Group, which is, as you know, a wonderful group that was started at that time that helped people in the community, because we want to be part of the community initiative rather than separate from it. So we did that and decided to be part of that wonderful work. So from all that kind of big vision, where it's all come from, 2018 and before that, I know there was always thoughts of using our hub area as a coffee shop before my time, and even when it was first built. All those things now funnel down into a place where we're beginning to think about what is the next step. What is the next step? We believe deeply we've been guided here. You may think it's coincidence. That's fine. But we are where we are. And this is a new phase for us, working in the community. Now, St. Martin's is what they call an eco-church. And we're a bronze eco-church winner. And so what that means is we care about our carbon footprint. We care about what we do in terms of the environmental impact of church life, which, believe it or not, if you think about the church throughout the whole of the UK, that's a lot of different churches bringing a lot of difference. And we're part of that. So it seemed really obvious to us that the vision for the coffee shop needed to combine this sense of community, but also the sense that we do care about our environment and our world, and it's deeply ingrained in who we are. So we came up with this phrase: love our community, love our planet. And that's where we really want to start. The team developed this further as well, saying our vision is for this space to create a place of meeting, a community where all those in the area can come to meet others and enjoy affordable and ethically produced food and drink. But the vision and mission had grown from where we were before. And we hope to share some of those details with you tonight. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Abby.
Hi. I hope I'm loud enough. I turned my microphone right down this morning, so it might need going up again. I don't know. Thank you. Can we go back to the slides? Sorry, Sanjay. Of course. Thank you. So we wanted to talk a bit about how that's kind of that vision that we started with has expanded and has kind of developed as we've thought about what our community needs and might want in the next months, weeks, months, years even. And so, have the next slide, please. I think Dan's on the next slide, isn't he? So the first thing is, what this means for our community is we want our community space. So it's more than a coffee shop. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But we want our community space to give us an opportunity to connect with the whole of the local community in much more meaningful ways, offering welcome and hospitality. We're really aware that our buildings are amazingly well used because they're great buildings for things like the uniformed organisations like the Scouts and the Brownies and the Guides. We have a fabulous drama tots group that meets twice a week. We've had rugby clubs, all kinds of things. But actually, so often those activities take place really with only incidental activity from the church community. And we really wanted to create ways for us to welcome the community in more meaningful ways. And the reason the coffee shop came up, we know from just being around the area that there are very few facilities like that in our local area. It's brilliant that the library has got some facilities that are just being installed now, which is amazing, but really there's been very little else. And so a coffee shop, a place for lunch, for, to grab snacks, to meet together, to sit and just chat in a comfortable space. A children's play area, a way of welcoming all ages into this space to make use. We're an incredibly unusual church in that we have a churchyard, lots of outdoor space, but no graveyard. What we have, if you're online and you're watching, or if you've been to the church, you'll see at the back of church we had a great big field. That's a fantastic thing that we can use with people of all ages. But actually, how could we use that better? As a place of welcome, a place of hospitality, a place for us to say to our community, you're important and we would love you to be here. And we know that there's a desire. We know there isn't much in the way of play areas either, other than perhaps the Memorial Park is probably the closest sort of play area. And that's quite a decent distance for little children. We know there's that desire. We're really grateful, actually, for the amazing response. We put a community survey out in last month, just to kind of gauge what people thought. Were we on the right track or were we just going a bit mad? And we had the most extraordinary response to that survey, saying absolutely yes. Over 90% thought a coffee shop and a use of that community space was either a really good or very good idea. I think over 75% thought a children's play area was something that this community needed. Now, we're really grateful for those responses because that's confirmed what we thought. But it means that that's our place now. That's what we see as something that we can offer our community, a place of welcome, a place of hospitality for all ages to come and just be and meet. And the next point, we really want to be able to offer friendship and support and a listening ear to those people who want it or need it. We've got a vision for people in the area. It's why we wanted something that was going to be staffed, like a coffee shop, something that was going to need people to be present for it to work, because that way there'll be people there to welcome the community in. And we'll talk a bit more about volunteering and that kind of thing, but this idea of having people there who are willing to listen, aren't just there to serve coffee, but are there to listen, to chat, and if necessary, if we need to, then to find other services that we can signpost people onto. That's a job a church would often do, but actually this is to do it, all the way through the week, to have a place people can come where they know that if they need some information, this is something that they can get here. We want to listen, we want to build relationships. We want to be able to help people where they need it. And then the next point, we want to be able to create opportunities to connect with each other in new ways. For people who want to volunteer. We were overwhelmed with the offers. We had a free text bit on our survey that we thought, nobody will fill that in. We were overwhelmed with offers of help and volunteering, wanting to get involved in various ways. And we just thank you for that. We've stored all them up and we will come and talk to you when the time is right. Don't think we've forgotten. But we want to create a place where people can volunteer, can meet new people, can connect in new ways, can learn new skills, perhaps, can pass on their own experience to other people. And this is where we started to think about what did having a sustainable, eco-friendly coffee shop mean? Well, that meant actually, could we grow our own food? We've got all this land. We've got some gardening space. Well, why don't we have a community gardening project as part of that? And we've already got sort of 3 or 4 people saying, yeah, I want to help with that, I can do that. Passing on skills, getting involved. How amazing would it be to have kids who are coming to play on the play area go and have a look and see and learn about where food comes from? There's just the possibilities of that are endless, and it's all down to people being willing to come and pass those skills, share those experiences with each other. And in doing that, of course, the repair shop that Andrew's going to talk about will be part of that too. But in doing that, of course, that builds relationship, makes friendships, creates support networks that don't just rely on having a cup of coffee although I'm sure that'll be part of it. But do rely on working with each other, walking alongside each other. Now, we are very clear, we're a church. We certainly don't apologise for that. We are part of the Coventry Diocese, which means we share the Coventry Diocese aims and purposes. And one of the purposes that we feel fits in so well with what we have this vision for here at St Martin's is on the next slide. Sorry, Dan. Thank you. Is one of their purposes for the diocese as a whole is to deliver positive community transformation. And we really see this project we're talking about as a massive part of that. You see, our church being open to more of our community will allow us to support the people around us in practical ways, as well as emotional and spiritual ways, how you might expect a church to be. You know, we want to use our spaces, particularly the coffee shop, but all of our spaces, to create new ways of connecting with each other, like I've just said. So some ideas that we've had just sort of top of the head stuff at the moment is a coffee shop space allows us to perhaps have a memory cafe for people living with dementia, or a book club to encourage kind of reading and connection in different ways, or maybe a knit and natter if you want to come do some crafting. You know, that would just something that could just happen easily in a space like that over a cup of tea. Or we can expand what we have in the way of our amazing seniors group and our associate seniors group and our associate stay and play toddler group, having outdoor space that we can use and ways of supporting them with kitchen and coffee shop work will make perhaps a world of difference to what they're able to offer to the people that they want to support. The next point, of course, is that we know, don't we? We've all experienced, nearly 16 months of pandemic and the lockdowns that's involved. And we know really clearly, don't we, that isolation, poor mental health, they've become even more of a problem than they already were as a result of COVID. And actually, this is perhaps a small way of being able to allow the community to come back together, rebuild relationships, rebuild friendships, find new friendships, strengthen old ones in ways perhaps that wouldn't have been so easy otherwise. And the last point, I haven't got the points down, but it doesn't matter. The last point is that there we are. Ask and you shall receive. But the last point, please, Dan, is that we want to try and bless our community by providing a meeting place and a place of hospitality and welcome, which allows us to get to know more people, to respond to specific needs, to understand what those needs are in the first place. So then there may well be way more that we can do beyond what we're even considering and dreaming about at the moment. These are just the beginnings of something that could potentially offer more than we can even begin to imagine. But the only way we're going to know that is by getting to know, all of us getting to know each other better, and creating space to do that is so much part of this project that we're talking about tonight. I think that's probably enough from me. So I'm going to pass on to Dan, who by the power of technology, there he is, self-isolating like a good one.
Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to wait for... Oh, done already. Thank you, Matt. Or Sandra, whoever's there. So, unfortunately, with the technology limitations that we have, I can't hear anything that's going on in church or off the live stream. So, I imagine somebody will interrupt me if they need to. I'm going to spend a little bit of time, and I'm going to go at a fair pace. There'll be time to ask questions right at the end, either off the live stream or in person in church. I'm going to put some meat on the bones in terms of what we've been doing, how we've been doing it, and what things might look like. So I shall carry through. So one of the things that we did as a small team of people, we spent a very difficult afternoon looking at various coffee shops, and we had to drink a fair amount of coffee and tea and drink and eat some cake. It was a difficult afternoon, but we thought it was important to understand what other facilities were offering and what could we learn from them. How are they laying out spaces? All sorts of things from what the decor looked like. So we spent an afternoon doing that. We also then looked at something called the marketing mix, and without getting into lots of business terminology, it's really just a tool that allows you to look at what it is you're selling, who you're selling it to, how you're going to tell people about it, and who are the right people that are going to come along to it. So we spent a bit of time trying to put some thought around those things. Did we want to provide, we don't want to provide expensive teas and coffees. We absolutely wanted to provide good value for money, food and drink, ethically produced, and inviting our community to come and share that with us. So we spent a bit of time looking at our marketing mix. We created a working group, and this working group consisted of people in our church community that represented the wider community. We had a young mother, we had somebody that had, shall we say, more experience of life than the rest of us, and somebody that had some experience in the trade, and obviously some of the leaders of the church. And we created a working group, and of course the first thing that you have to do when you create a working group is have a workshop. So we had a workshop, and we explored really what's possible. So if money was no object, what would we like? Where would it be? How would it look? What stuff would we need? What staff would we need? And we broke this down. You might not be able to pick it out of the picture, but we broke this down into food and drink, what the building needs to do, and what people we need. And then we distilled that down into, well, actually, what's possible from what would ideal would look like. We carried out some market research. We looked at other fairly local churches to see what they were doing in their coffee shops, get a feel for what they provided, the space they had, but also something around their financial measures to see if they were making a profit or not, and some were, and some weren't. We also had some really good insight from also a member of the working group who provided some great information from young mothers in terms of what they would like to see from a space should they come along to that. We got 3 costs for every piece of equipment we need. Whilst we don't have any major structural work to do in the building, we definitely need to buy, for example, a professional coffee machine and lots of other equipment that goes with that: tables, chairs, knives, forks, all the things that you would imagine you would need in a space that provides food and drink. We created a typical menu. We put an initial cash flow together to see whether that was going to we were going to break even or not. We also shared our thoughts and vision with the Coventry Diocese, and whilst we did that at various points and various levels, primarily we got involved with the team that look after grants, and we invited them over. We shared our thoughts, and they helped us get to a position where we put some bids in for some funding. We're going to come on to that in a moment. We also discussed our plans with environmental health. Clearly want to make sure that we're providing a safe space and the right kind of space to create food and serve food from. They were actually very happy with the existing space. We think we've got some improvement to make ourselves, but they were very comfortable with what we currently have in place. And then we applied for funding. So on funding, we have a total, we think we had a total expenditure of around £47,000. And that includes a whole load of things which I'll try and go through. Initially, we applied and were granted £5,000 through the Church Improvement Fund. That's a diocese-led grant system. The church and the PCC agreed that we would match that funding. And that was also a requirement of the next stage, which was that we wanted to, and we've only last week pressed the go button on bidding for £17,000 through the FCC. And I don't think any of us really understand what the FCC stands for, but it's basically the landfill over Bubbenhall Way, that if you are within a certain distance, and we are within a certain distance of that, you can apply for some funding for community-based projects. Unfortunately, the decision on that won't be made until the beginning of September, so we won't know. And we can't do anything. We're not allowed to spend any money, do any projects until that money has been granted. Now, the astute amongst you will say, well, that doesn't equal £47,000. Absolutely right. One of the things that we found out today at a late stage in putting the bidding forward through to the FCC is that around £20,000 of our overall expenditure was for a solar panel system, which would have been on the church. I'll show you some pictures in a moment. On a church hall roof, so it doesn't face the road. It faces the school tennis courts and football fields. But unfortunately, they would not. It's one of the criteria that they have on the FCC. They don't fund solar PV systems. So we had to take that out of the bid. Hence just over £17,000 actually. What does the space look like for those that are either online or in church? This is, I'm sure those that are familiar with it will understand what I'm about to put on the screen here. But this is our hub area. It's the area you arrive into church if you come through the main doors. This area just here is a serving hatch, and on the other side of there is a kitchen, which looks like that. And there's the serving hatch you can see right in the middle of the screen there. So it's a reasonably decent size, fairly industrial kitchen already, and there would be a coffee machine just to the left of the hatch there, where you can see that silver water boiler in the corner. And there's very little else we need to do in there other than replace some of the appliances and purchase some more commercial-based equipment. In terms of what a layout might look like, Matt spent hours and hours putting this together, and I think it's a pretty good representation of what we want the space to look like. We want to reutilize some of the chairs that are in the hall. They're old church chairs, so we'd like to reuse those. We want some hanging signs just to split the area a bit. The only thing this doesn't show is that one of the things that we put through for our funding was to replace all of the floors. So at the moment we have carpeted floors, and we want to replace those with hard-wearing laminate, well not laminate, but vinyl flooring. The sort of things that you would expect to find in a high footfall area in a traditional coffee shop. Abby mentioned this earlier as well. So this is, for those who don't know, this is our allotment. It's rather overgrown at the moment. Over the last 12 months, the people that would normally tend to this haven't been able to make it there due to lockdown. So, can you hear myself talking back again? So this space here is all of our allotment space. There's a little bit more which you can't see. And the bottom picture there on the left-hand side is pointing out towards the field area that Abby mentioned at the back of the church. And we would envisage that there would be some raised beds there that allow our community to come along and help grow whatever they want to grow in there, probably veg and fruit maybe. But this space is also going to be used to self-serve the coffee shop with some of the raw ingredients that we might need to serve the food and that we would like to serve at lunchtimes and throughout the day. We also need a greenhouse. You can see there on the right-hand side, that'll be for salads and such like all the way through the year. In terms of children's play area, this isn't necessarily exactly what we want to put in place, but something similar to this. It probably needs to have a few more slides and things on it. We need to make sure that it doesn't exceed a critical fall height, and it would sit on the grass and the backfield, in as close as we can get that to the rear exit of the coffee shop door. But something along those lines that and also we probably have an outdoor coffee area, so during the summer it's very easy to sit, have a coffee and a piece of cake, and watch little ones playing on the climbing frame. As I said earlier, we also looked at solar PV, and you'll see that if you can just about make that out, it's about £19,800. It would sit on, I think it's southeast facing. That might be, I think that's right. Facing away, as I say, towards the school playing fields. And then we couldn't fund that through the FCC bid, so we are looking at finding alternative ways of funding that. We still think it's absolutely important. It fits with our vision and mission in terms of loving our planet, and we very much want to be able to power as much of our electricity load in the coffee shop and the rest of the church buildings through that solar PV system. I also must just say we also looked at things like rainwater harvesting, which sounds like a great idea. We have a lot of roof space. We collect a lot of water. Unfortunately, you have to put a huge plastic a bucket in the floor to collect all that, and we weren't particularly comfortable with a great big load of plastic, and also it just wasn't commercially viable for us just now. So and when that does become commercially viable, it's something that we definitely will look at in the future. We also looked at electric vehicle charging points. That also wasn't commercially viable for us, but we'll keep an eye on that too. I'm going to hand over to Andrew now, who's going to talk briefly about the Repair Cafe.
Then I got a bit of reputation of repairing things. So someone asked me to look at a tape recorder, said it's making funny noises, it's not sounding very good. And remembering that tape recorders were big things in those days with reel-to-reel. This is back in the 70s. So I said, well, let me have a look at it. So I took the back off and hurried out of the house, because inside, remembering this is the tropics in Uganda, inside there were a lot of cockroaches. So having got some insecticide spray, and unfortunately I didn't count, but it must have been 20 or 30 cockroaches. After we got those out, it sounded much better. The scratchy noise must have been them short-circuiting some of the circuit somewhere. But there are many things today that we, if they go wrong, we just throw them out. If they stop working, we just go and buy a new one. And you may well have heard that there's an increasing pressure to talk about a right to repair, to get things repaired. Now, it's not quite, you may have noticed the change there, not repair shop, as you may have been thinking of the TV program where people bring in precious family heirlooms and get them repaired by amazing experts. We're not really talking about that. We're more talking about repairing common things. Now, what we'll need to do is have a bit of a team of people with different expertise. So we'll probably need someone who's good at sewing, good with a sewing machine to repair stuff. We will probably may need someone who maybe there's a coffee shop running actually over, or has been running before lockdown, over in Rugby, and there they had someone who repairs jewellery. There may be someone who looks at electrical equipment, or someone who looks at tables or chairs that need repairing. A whole variety, or metalwork that needs repairing. A whole variety of things. The principle that I think many of these repair shops have gone, if you can carry it with two hands, then bring it in. So we won't be able to manage your washing machine or dishwasher, but your coffee table or a chair or whatever, we could have a look at it. It will depend on what kind of people we get to volunteer. So we'll need to build a team of people who are prepared to have a go at things. It's something my principle has often been, if something's broken, well, if it's broken, I can't make it any worse by taking it apart. If at the end of it it's still broken, well, it's still broken. And the other principle I often go on is, well, if someone put it together, there must be some way of taking it apart. Even if I often find I've taken 20 screws out when actually I could have only taken about 5 to get into where I want to get into. And increasingly things like toasters and hoovers and things you can get spares for, and they can be repaired and reused. So they don't have to go into landfill. There has been a practical problem with getting spares for a lot of things. So we hope to be able to build up a team of people who will be prepared to repair these things. The principle they've gone in the shop in the place, the cafe in Rugby, is that though there'll be volunteers who do the work, they will work alongside the people who've brought it in to try and show them how to do it. And if they need parts, then the person who's brought the item in will purchase them or pay for them. If somebody there happens to have the spare part that's needed, well, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, if we can get someone who's got some expertise in computer repair or whatever, then we can have a look at doing that. And it may be sometimes, I can't get my computer to work. Well, it may be just someone with a bit more knowledge can actually sort it out fairly quickly. Obviously, in some ways, we're a coffee shop serving the community. And one thing that occurs to me as a church coffee shop, of course, what we're essentially saying is that if you've got something that's broken, very often it can be fixed. Isn't that something like what the Christian message is saying, that if you feel broken, if you bring it to God the expert, it can be fixed? Okay.
Fantastic, thank you. Giving us a really good insight there. Thank you to Dan and to Abby. And I'm going to hand back to Dan now, who's going to just hopefully go through some of the questions that you may be thinking of, and then we'll be open for questions. And by all means, those who are watching online, there's over 20 households, so there maybe 30 or 40 people watching. If you want to add a comment, we'll see if we can deal with it online as well. So, Dan, back to you, I believe, for the last.
Hi again, everyone. As Matt said, I'm just going to go very quickly through some frequently asked questions. As we've been talking to people over the last few weeks or so, these are the sort of questions that seem to come up quite frequently. There we go. So in terms of the coffee shop itself, it will serve traditional coffees made with a professional coffee machine, teas, other hot drinks, cold drinks, cakes, sandwiches, soups, paninis, that kind of food. And in time, who knows, that might extend to other kinds of breakfast and lunchtime foods too. We think initially we'd like to open Monday to Saturday, 8:30 to around 4 p.m. And we'll see how that sits. So we might find that there's particularly busy days or not, and then we may adjust those times and days depending on how we see footfall. But we certainly want to be open all the time from the get-go. It will be a permanent fixture, so those of you that are familiar with how generally that space is used currently, we tend to get things out and then put them away again. This will be there all the time. We won't be putting anything away. It will be there, well, obviously, as you can see the point before, Monday to Saturday, pretty much all day long. So getting that out and putting it away will be a bit of a pain. So it will be there permanently. We will provide, as you've heard throughout, we'll provide spaces for children indoors and outdoors. The indoor space will probably be quite small because we don't have a huge amount of space within that coffee shop area for people to keep an eye on the little ones as they're drinking coffee and eating a lovely slice of cake. But certainly outside, as you've seen, there'll be a bigger space. We've also thought about things. We've thought of lots and lots of things, and Matt mentioned a couple of those, and Abby too earlier. But one of those, for example, would be an optional sit with me sign. So for those people that maybe have been a little bit isolated, feeling a little lonely, can take one of these signs, put it on a table, and invite people, assuming that we're safe to do so by then, to come and sit and chat at any age. We will have Wi-Fi. We do have Wi-Fi, and it will be free. And we're hoping to provide some electric sockets and USB points for charging phones and what have you, laptops maybe, if people want to work from there. In terms of the kitchen, so I appreciate that maybe some of the people watching aren't that familiar with the spaces that we have, but for those that are, the main kitchen, the picture I showed earlier, due to hygiene regulations, it can't be used by anybody else that isn't certified. That's a environmental health piece of legislation, not ours. We will probably be able to use that for large church events, and we do have those 2 or 3 times a year, as long as it's operated by an approved and certified persons. The coffee shop could also provide catering for associate groups. Some of those were mentioned earlier, like seniors, for example, and also non-church events. So in time, we could provide catering through that kitchen for weddings, for example, or parties. We also have another kitchen. We're very fortunate to have a smaller kitchen, what we refer to as the middle kitchen. We are almost finished refreshing that because a lot of the equipment that is currently in the main kitchen will need to move across to there. It will have, I'm not sure whether I say it on here, there we are. It'll be hired out on a first come first served basis to those people that are hiring the other spaces that we have. And it will have some equipment in there. I forget now whether we talk about this in a later slide, but it'll have its own fridge. It's already got a cooker and a hob and lots of crockery and pots and pans. So it will make sure that space is usable. Some other information is that we've got a lot, for those that are aware, we've got a lot of the barrelware currently in the main kitchen, and if people that we don't use it very often, but we use it for large events, and some of our associate groups like seniors will be using that probably, so we need to put that into some close by storage. There's some lockable cupboards close by that we can put that into, dip into when we need to, but it frees up a fair amount of space for the main kitchen to use for the coffee shop. Oh, here we are. This is what I said earlier on. Plates, bowls, all the bits and bobs that you need in the middle kitchen. Small fridge. And for those that are thinking about this Sunday service coffee, so after the 9 o'clock and the 11 o'clock service on a Sunday, if we're not in lockdown or having a pandemic, we normally stay around and have tea and coffee afterwards. That will be made from the middle kitchen and brought out in a similar style that we've been doing, or we were doing a year or so ago, from the main kitchen. In terms of staffing, we intend to employ somewhere around 1.2 full-time employees. It'll be the person that prepares food, manages the kitchen, buys the stock, and runs the coffee shop. 1.2 because probably it'll be more than one person well, obviously it'll have to be more than one person if it's 1.2. But we'll share a rota system across the number of days that we'll open and hours that we'll open for. We appreciate that we might have to take more staff on, especially if we're doing outside catering or if we find that particular days or times we have higher footfall and we need to, excuse the pun, cater for that. As people have mentioned before, hosts, as we like to call them, and waiting staff will be contracted through a charity. There are charities around that we've been investigating to provide waiting staff, or it'll be provided by volunteers. And we've already had some people that have said they're interested in volunteering, so thank you to those people. And for those thinking about, well, who's that person going to report to, we haven't quite figured that out yet, but it's going to be either the vicar, a church warden, or the PCC. PCC becomes a little bit more complicated because it's probably better to report to a single person than a group of people. And that's me finished. Thank you, Matt.
Great. Great. So we're going to open it up a little bit for questions now. For the last, we wanted to only be an hour at this tonight, so hopefully we can finish it by that time. And we're going to just open up for 1 or 2 questions. And I've got the first one on the screen. Would Repair Shop run for free or a small charge to the church?
I suppose that's something that's yet to be determined. The one that runs through a church in Rugby doesn't charge, but they kind of expect you to buy a cup of coffee or a refreshment as you're waiting to have your bit of equipment repaired.
Yeah.
And then there's an opportunity for people to give a donation for the work for the repair that's been done. And they have quite a number of people who just donate. So yes, the actual repair would not be charged for, as far as I understand.
One thing's for sure, we're not for profit. That's the whole point. Is it's about if we make any surplus that we put back into the community projects. So that's quite important to say that. I mean, is there anybody here who would like to ask a question?
Thanks, Janet.
Alvaro.
I want to ask if we could, sorry, I'll get this up. I would like to ask the team with the shop if we can add a new idea to the whole thing. The idea is to provide workshops, music workshops to children. And we have the catchment area just next door, which is the school. And it's easy to approach them. I am the one who provide the music workshop myself, mainly drumming and singing, to go with the drumming. And I was thinking if we need to set up that, the way to go about it is to actually visit the school. I could go and talk to the teachers and talk to the children in different age groups, etc., and offer them, the possibility to come around and learn drumming.
Thank you, Alvaro. We did have a chat about this. I think it's a tremendous idea. If anybody knows Alvaro, and he's incredible. I think probably if we could say the questions, so we just be careful with the microphone, if that's all right. So yeah, Alvaro. I mean, this is the whole thing about, this platform, as we can think of all sorts of creative ideas, and I love that idea. I really do love that idea.
Matt, just before the pandemic, we had started an art group for the community. And obviously, we were very enthusiastic about it. How do you see this fitting in, and how do you see we can actually showcase some of the work they're doing? And on a community level, if you invited the local artists to showcase their work, to decorate your cafe, it might be a way.
Sounds fabulous,
Sounds
Janet.
great.
Yeah, up for that every day of the week. I think it's fair to say what we are trying to keep is, I know the space that the art group was using before COVID was in the fellowship room, is in the smaller of our 2 halls, wasn't it? And I think the idea is that fellowship room remains a flexible space. There's no reason why that group can't happen, why that could be a place for the drum workshop, or that could be in here or whatever. Absolutely, this is exactly the kind of thing we want to encourage. And to have artwork, have our own homegrown artwork would be amazing. So yes, absolutely.
City of Culture would be great to do pretty
fabulous.
quick. So, yeah,
absolutely.
Totally, absolutely.
Yeah, I would have thought it will depend on how busy we are at what time, whether it would be done in the coffee shop area or in the fellowship room.
Yeah, the space.
What we're trying to build, as you can probably tell, is a platform for creativity and connection, and both a place of welcome, a place where people can just have a good cup of coffee as well, and meet friends, but also a place that there are other things which can happen. So I can see all sorts of ideas. I can see another question as well. Will you cater for gluten-free and other dietary requirements?
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely.
That's a nice, easy one to answer.
That's an easy one.
That's a nice, easy answer, Joe, for you.
Yeah.
Anything else online? Yeah. Can the shop have shelves that can be hired out to crafters to sell their items? have thought about that. We have to be fairly careful about what goes in the area so it isn't too full of things and cluttered, because as you know, but there's no reason why we can't consider that. So I think that would just go to the team. The coffee shop, will have someone who's running it, but there'll be a team behind it who are considering these ideas and where they're going.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there potentially is going to be a problem of security on that, in that the coffee shop is not there 24/7.
Small children.
And in the evenings, there are stouts and brownies, etc., coming through that way. So we'd have to look at that more fairly carefully.
Yeah, but that's not discounting it, Heather. Fantastic presentation, Alison. Thanks, Ellie. Lovely. We love you. Thank you very much. Lisa's saying it's exciting. That's not surprising for Lisa. She likes things to be exciting, and we like Lisa. And thank you, Lisa. Appreciate it. Any further questions from anyone here who'd like to ask? Any comments even? Yes. Just be careful with the mic, that's all, Andrew. Don't get too close.
Regarding the things that you're going to, the food stuffs in your coffee shop, would you be open to receiving donations of cakes and other eatery items? Because I'd be quite willing to offer to make things for you.
That's really kind, thank you. We have to be really careful. Yeah, because obviously for the environmental health agencies, the environmental health sort of requirements and regulations. But I mean, that's certainly something we can investigate further. I know we do have people who work in that sort of area already in our who may be able to advise us better about that.
They kind of get their kitchens certified, so they're able to do it.
Yeah.
So it just becomes a bit more complicated, but it's not impossible.
It's not
impossible, but I think your kitchen would have to be certified as being.
There's certain things you have to do.
Yeah.
And,
It's sort of to make sure it's not infested with rats or cockroaches.
But you can deal with cockroaches, Andrew.
Yes.
We already told us that, so that's fine. No, I think the certification is actually relatively straightforward, certainly in terms of certifying people to handle food. And that's certainly something we've budgeted for as part of our initial costs and actually ongoing training costs. So as we bring volunteers in, whether it be to do something like you're suggesting or to actually be part of what's happening in the kitchen and the shop itself, then we'll be looking to make sure that they've got all of those certifications in place. So that's all budgeted for and thought through. So we've got that in the back of our minds, but that's a really helpful question. Thank you. We can check about that.
will there be a programme of times and events? The answer is, well, yes, when we get there. Facebook is, not everybody's digital, I know, but Facebook is such an easy way for us to, we've got over 500
People who follow us,
over 500 people follow us on Facebook. I think there are 570 people which is quite unusual for a church of our size. So people can follow that.
Obviously things like the Repair Cafe won't be running every day. The one in Rugby runs once a month. We might be running once a fortnight or once a week. We'll have to see. It depends on people who are prepared to help and what sort of demand we get.
Yeah. But certainly, I mean, things like the community garden type stuff, that will need to be tended pretty much year round. And as those people volunteer for that, and as we start to get a sense of how that might look, we might have specific activities that happen at a particular time in the week, and we can, but that will develop and that will build. We've got some ideas. We've got ideas of how to, attach certain days have quite a lot of activity in the halls already that may well generate more people into the coffee shop already, like stay and play, lunchtimes after stay and play, or perhaps the lunchtime before the seniors club, for instance. So we've got those ideas, and we just need to make sure we don't create too much chaos for the people, bless them, running the coffee shop in those moments. So we'll be tailoring anything else we offer around what's already likely to be creating quite a lot of footfall.
And also we are thinking further as well about young adults as well. How can we use the coffee shop for young adults, possibly even out of hours, to be run for young adults. So, people in their 20s.
Do you envisage having a working party that will concentrate on getting funding? Because it's a continuous thing once you start something like this. You need to constantly looking at sources of funding.
We're hoping that the plan is, and the way we've set up the planning of it and the budgeting of it, is that the coffee shop will actually produce the funding to keep all of this going. That's the plan. Is that actually in effect it'll wipe its face? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, the cash flow appears, and we've been pretty ungenerous.
Yeah, we've been quite pessimistic to make sure that we're
it
not.
appears, it looks like if we're looking at the kind of numbers that we think we will attract, it should run itself.
And give us a little bit extra, to cover maintenance and that kind of thing.
But as a team, we're looking at other funding specifically for the solar PV. So that would probably be our last big, at the moment, unless somebody comes up with something crazy, our last big piece of funding, I think. Yeah. But yes, I think there's going to be a team that helps to continue to sustain.
Yeah. I think we're quite confident that we've put a good bid in for the money that we've bid for. We've already been successful with the diocese, the Church Improvement Fund. We're really hopeful that we'll get something, that will help us set this up. However, the reality is that we have got contingency, and we can do this in stages if we needed to. It's just we'd really like to do it all in one go because we're excited about it. If we end up having to do it in stages for whatever reason, then actually, yes, you're quite right. That may be where we need to start doing some fundraising and think about how we do it. But we're staying optimistic,
Yep.
and we're pretty confident that we can get this up and running all in one go.
Yeah.
I think you all know that I work as a volunteer, and I'm one of the directors of Carriers of Hope. Carriers of Hope started with one project, and that was helping asylum seekers, especially young women with children. Just to cut the story short, we now have 47 projects. But the interesting thing here to learn about that is that all 47 projects are funded by different funders, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Under the umbrella of Carriers of Hope, we have different things going on. Different funders, different projects, different aims, each of them. And that would be something not for now, for this particular project, but for the near future.
Yeah, I mean,
because if you set up, for example, something for the young mothers and babies,
yeah,
you go to particular funders to get that money for that project.
Yeah.
And if it's music, you go to other funders, etc., etc.
I mean, all I would say is we don't want to lose our distinctive, the fact that we are a church community. And there are so many needs, so we have to be quite careful about that, I think. That's not saying I suspect. My experience is, and I know it's the experience that you're talking about, Alvaro, is the fact that God works, or we would say God works quite organically, and suddenly something happens and you're running over there to do something else, and it goes that way, and suddenly there's a decision about that and it moves the other way, and so it makes it very dynamic. So yeah, I mean, we're aware there's so many things we could do, but I want to make sure, and we want to make sure, we still remain distinctly a church rather than the community centre.
It's interesting though, we have actually talked to quite a lot of people with expertise and experience in these kind of areas, and one of the people we talked to early in the summer last year, wasn't it, when we were able to talk to people in between the lockdowns, was somebody who runs part of running Coffee Tots in the middle of town. If you've been to Coffee Tots Cafe there, they work specifically with young families, and they've been incredibly helpful and they're an absolute whizzes at finding the right kind of grant funding in the right kind of place. So you're absolutely right, it's there. We just need to make sure that, as Matt says, we're getting it in the right way and in the right place. There is actually an answer to your question about making cakes. Somebody on our resident catering expert has commented, I've just seen, to say that if you wanted to volunteer to make cakes, you could come and make them in the kitchen if you got your certificate. So there you go. So there's always a way.
There's always a way. So we've only got 1 minute left before we finish. And Jill Lomax is asking, are we looking to get local schools involved in allotment space? You try and stop Kate from doing that. That's all who's our children's and families worker. It's definitely something we want to do. Obviously, it's not an enormous area, but I think we can work with year groups and encourage them. So I think that is definitely something we would think about.
So we're mentioning one of the other things we talked about was having in the rest of the space, not just having the play area, but perhaps having sort of nature trails and, you know, insect hotels and things like that we've been talking about anyway, and actually that could be very much part of this, and that's certainly another way of engaging with the schools who in normal times would come here anyway. So,
yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to bring Dan in. I'm just telling him now so he's not doing something or he's walked out.
Picking his nose.
So we can see him there. Just to say thanks, Dan, for what you did tonight. Appreciate it. And to Abby and to Andrew. And thank you so much for those who are here and the questions that have been asked, and for those online who are watching or maybe watching this afterwards. I would encourage you to keep the conversation going. If you've got other questions, we'll be watching both the Facebook feed, and this will go up onto YouTube as well. So we're watching the YouTube feeds. If there are other questions that we could answer for you or do our best to answer for you, we will do that. So just want to say thank you very much for your time and for your interest, and we're really praying that this is going to be an incredible project that really kind of brings our community together, and really for us as a church community is an expression of God's love. So thank you very much.